You're listening to the Toolstation Western League podcast with Ian Knockholds and Tom Hiscott.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 12 of the Toolstation Western League podcast with me, Ian Knockholds, and I'm delighted to be joined on the line by Tom Hiscott, the editor of the Bulletin. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, not doing too bad. A little bit of a cold, but nothing that will keep me from discussing all the goings on in the Western League. So yeah, not doing too bad. Yourself?
Well, I'm not bad. I was a little bit worried I was going to miss all the action at the weekend because I went on a very pleasant little family breakaway to very close to Eastbourne over the weekend. We had a long weekend with the kids, and it was beautiful. It was a bit of a National Trust crawl. Went to a number of properties, and normally I wouldn't talk about all of this on the podcast. Well, normally I probably wouldn't I? You know me. But the point is, it's not football. But actually, there wasn't a great deal of football to be had, was it? The weather took rather a hammer blow to our fixture list at the weekend, so I think there's probably plenty of games I could catch up just to get myself back in the groove. But I suppose in some respects that's good news for us on the podcast because it means that we get the opportunity to do a comprehensive review of the weekend's fixtures. Coming up, we've got interviews with Adam Castle, the manager at Buckland, and Stuart Jones, the manager at Ashton and Backwell. So we start by having a look at the fixtures on Saturday the 26th of October. Only 7 matches made it, 3 in the Premier Division, 4 in the First Division, and we'll kick off with 2 of the Premier Division's bigger hitters. Bridgewater Town, they took on Buckland Athletic.
Yeah, it was a really good game down there. Bridgewater just about salvaging a point in the end. Finished 3-3, but Buckland put themselves in position to gain the 3 points, but they had to make do with one in the end. It was Bridgewater who led by 1-0 at the break with a cross-come shot from Jake Brown, nestling in the back of the net before Richard Groves then equalised from the spot 4 minutes into the second half, giving Buckland a bit of a fill-up during the second half. And he continued. Groves having an excellent day in front of goal, made it 2-1 with a free kick pretty soon after levelling affairs, and then managed to complete his hat-trick 20 minutes from time. I think that's now 5 goals in 3 for Groves, so he's banging form for Buckland. And as I say, it looked like they were gonna get the pretty impressive victory, but Bridgewater had other ideas, and it was Harry Horton, very much the saviour. 5 minutes from time, he managed to bury a long-range volley to bring them back into the game, and then in stoppage time, with his left foot this time, he managed to get an equaliser, and that's how it stayed. So obviously Bridgewater coming back to claim a 3-3 draw at home to Buckland, but a really good game down there.
Absolutely, and that was my game to watch last week in the Premier Division because I'd noticed that Buckland's fortunes, although they'd got off to a poor start this season, Buckland's fortunes had certainly improved in recent weeks, and I'm sure that that's part in no small measure to the return once again of Adam Castle, of course, a man synonymous with that football club who's moved upstairs to become sporting director. Indeed, he moved across the Irish Sea to live in Ireland, but he's moved downstairs back to the dugout, and he's taken the reins to see them through another difficult time for the Devon club. Well, with that in mind, I started my conversation with Adam by asking him, given the form that Bridgewater Town have been in this season, and certainly they've got all the credentials for promotion chasers, whether or not he'd have taken the point that they achieved on Saturday before the game.
To be honest, Ian, you're not the only one who's asked me that in the last 48 hours. But I think if we're honest, yes, we probably would have done because it's earmarked as one of the toughest away games of our season. And if you can get something from the game, great. But yes, I would have done. But clearly, if you'd have offered me that at 20-5 on Saturday at 3-1 up, I would have said no.
You know, given recent results and everything, I mean, were you and notwithstanding the position that you were in on Saturday, I mean, how happy were you with the performance? Bridgewater's not an easy place to go, is it?
No, absolutely not. No, I was delighted with the performance and proud of all the players, to be honest. And I've said in a separate interview that I think we were a victim of our own confidence on the day because at 3-1 it looked like being 4-1, 5-1. So we were pushing and pushing, which is, I think, just natural. You know, when you're playing so well. I mean, we were down Camelford a few weeks ago, only 2-1 up in the Vars, not playing very well, and we sat on the lead and we saw the game out perfectly. Whereas on Saturday, we were going hell for leather for the fourth, and although we were trying to stop it, it wasn't easy to stop. And then Bridgewater, being Bridgewater, kept going themselves, got a couple of long-distance efforts on target, they flew in the corner, and, fair play to them.
I mean, were you pleased that the match was able to go ahead on Saturday? Because obviously we lost so many fixtures at the weekend because of the weather.
Yeah, absolutely delighted. I mean, I wasn't sure how bad the weather was because I was travelling for the game at the time, but Bridgewater is one of the best, if not the best, in the pitch for drainage, certainly. I mean, the pitch was fabulous on Saturday. You wouldn't have even known we'd had the rain we'd had. So full credit to Bridgewater and their ground staff. It was absolutely, it was never in doubt. We even warmed up on the pitch, and I walked across it afterwards, shake the referee's hand and all that. And it wasn't even cut up. It was absolutely brilliant.
Now, there's an air of deja vu to this interview because, of course, I think the last time that we were in regular contact, we were speaking quite a lot about the weather on that occasion, and indeed you'd come back to the club under those circumstances as well, because obviously you've moved on to become director of football. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it has been a disappointing start for you this season. However, the draw that you got on Saturday, that comes off the back of 3 consecutive wins. So in recent weeks, at least, the form has improved substantially.
It has. I mean, what we've tried to do, myself, Jack Furzer, who was the head coach at the time, who has moved on subsequently, taking a job at Elmore with his friend Steve Orchard, and Neil Montadon, we just went back to basics and did a basic shape and basic hard work, and just tried not to complicate things a little bit. I mean, for me, it's a tried and tested method. You look at the squad of players who've got what formation suits them. It's this formation. Let's go and do that, and let's stick to that, and let's train like that. Let's play every game like that. And that's what we're doing, and we are seeing the rewards from that. Lads are turning up now, almost knowing 95% of the team selection. There's nobody sitting there wondering what we're going to do this week, which shape are we going to do this week. So we've just simplified things, to be honest with you, Ian, and we're getting the rewards. But, we need to keep going. It wasn't a great start. It wasn't horrific, but it wasn't as good as we had anticipated as a club. And, you can see on Saturday, it's a great point, but you're still languishing miles away from the pace. So we've got to keep bringing the results in. But, of course, we're on to 2 cup games now. So slightly different thought process for these two, and our next league game is Tavistock, where we've lost 5-0 this season already. So we're up against it now. We've got 2 must-win cup games, and then some really difficult league games.
Now, what about your own position at the club? Obviously, you are currently the director of football, and you have been for a couple of seasons now. But yeah. What is the current news on finding a new sort of full-time manager for the first team?
Okay, well, to answer that in 2 parts, people will obviously think, how come, Adam keeps going back in charge? And I get asked that a lot. Part of my role as director of football is to take control if there is no manager in place. So it's inevitable that if things go wrong and there's a change being made, or a manager moving on for their own choice, I'm going to be back in the hot seat for a period of time. It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be the rest of the season. What we're just trying to do now, because we didn't anticipate Richard leaving. We had a 3 to 5 year plan, which unfortunately wasn't moving fast enough for us. 12 months on, so hence the change. At this point, I'm happy with the quality of the squad. It's a little bit short on numbers, but that's fine. We've got a reserve team and a development team, so we're always picking from 50 or 60. We can't complain we haven't got enough people, and I'm happy with the support staff around me. I've got Neil Montadon as first team coach, Stuart Jones is the assistant, and we have a top class physio in Paige Burrows. So, at the moment, we're not actively looking to bring in a manager as such. I'm not saying we wouldn't add a senior person to some coaching staff potentially, but at the moment we've calmed things down a bit. Player turnover was very, very high. We've used in excess of nearly 40 players already this season, and I've said this time and time again, if you look at the successful sides at any level of football, they're not using that level of people. There's a much more consistent squad selection, team selection. So that's our priority at the moment, and I feel at the moment I'm in the best place to do that. That doesn't mean that's going to go on forever, because that's impossible where I'm living. But for now, we're not active. shall I say, and maybe we'll review that in the new year.
Well, it's certainly working for you at the moment. You've got Cheddar in the Les Phillips. You've mentioned this already in the cup competitions, and then you've got St Austell in the Vase. Now that must be a massive game for the club.
It is. I mean, obviously with the Cheddar game coming up tonight, I've not turned my attentions to St Austell because I need to be very respectful to Cheddar and the Les Phillips Cup. But we are aware of what can happen from having a really good cup run. It was only 3 years ago we were in the last 8 of the bars, and we're very well out, can galvanise everybody. All of a sudden there's a lot of interest in your team. Players are interested again. And it's just really, really good for the club. And having St Austell, it could have been an easier tie, of course, than St Austell, but I think both management teams are going to go into that game on Saturday thinking they can win, and that should play for a very, very good game. I don't think either of us is going to be cagey and sitting on the 0-0. I think we just both believe we can win the game, and that should bode for an extremely exciting afternoon.
After the Vase, you've got Tavistock in the league. You mentioned that you've already had a difficult result there. But what's interesting about that to me is that we've seen, obviously, since we first started talking on the podcast, an increase in the number of Devon clubs coming into the league. Has that affected you or the club at all? I mean, obviously, it must make travel slightly easier with fewer longer journeys. But I mean, is there an issue with competition for local players?
Yeah, there has been. I mean, even if you look at the restructuring going on below and how watered down Step 6 is now, with all the teams that are in Step 6, that's only one league below us. So we haven't got that. The attraction isn't there like it was when it was a huge step up to Buckland. Now people can play one league below and stay very, very local. But of course, there's going to be a watering down at Step 5 in a minute because you could potentially have 2 to 4 sides coming up from the peninsula. And that is going to help us to travel because the player fight has always been there. But it'll be brilliant next year if we're going to Exmouth, we're going to Tavistock, we're going to Bobby Tracy, Newton Spurs, because we're not going anywhere. They're derbies. We could end up with 4 or 5 derbies next season. I mean, Plymouth Parkway are in the league. Clearly they're pushing very hard to get out of the league. But I think in terms of the travel, we actually enjoy the travel. We really like getting on the bus and getting away for the day. But we're not going to be against going to Bobby Tracy, like I say, Ivy Bridge, anybody, close and just down the road would be great.
Well, the short-term future's looking good, but I mean, in the long term, when we've spoken before, I know you've invested a huge amount into the club, both financially and obviously of your own energies. Is the longer-term plan still to play at a higher level than the Western League?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's what we're striving towards. But our 3 to 5 year plan, which we started at the start of the season, if you like, is about developing our own players. It's not about us quadrupling any financial clout we might have. It's about staying sustainable, remaining a local club of local players and giving people opportunities that have come through the ranks. That obviously takes time, and we have to be a little bit patient on that. That's why results this season weren't the driving force behind the management change. So what we're trying to do now is, we've given debuts to 3 16-year-olds in the last month. We've had 17-year-olds involved, all lads playing at our club. That's what we need to do. Now, we're aware if we throw 3 or 4 of them in together, it's going to be a very difficult afternoon for everybody because they're just not ready. But if we can keep letting 1 or 2 go at a time, we're going to get the rewards for that. And if we can develop a side that's strong enough to win the division or win promotion from within, that is our target.
One final question. I noticed on social media that you'd had a floodlight fire, which, of course, particularly at our level, at non-league level, that's, the infrastructure cost for that can be horrendous. How's the club coping? How are the repairs coming along?
The repairs are done. We are ready to go for tonight's game against Cheddar. They've been tested and approved. That was all done in a week because it was a week ago today that we discovered there'd been a small fire. We test the floodlights on match day in the daytime. And it's something we've done. Our groundsman does that because we don't want to turn them on at 5:30, 6 o'clock when everyone's travelled and they're not working. This one was causing us a bit of problem, so of course we had an investigation and there it was. So unfortunately the Parkway game had to suffer, which was a shame because we haven't played at home for weeks and weeks, and Parkway would be a big crowd for us. We could have done with that game, and we're in good form, so it was a great time to play Parkway. But it's fixed. Financially, we're unsure of the total costs. We've used, shall we say, friends of the club, contacts. So hopefully we'll try and keep it down around the 2,000 mark. But it's a blow anyway. It's a blow to us. And like I say, we lost the Parkway game to boot. And I know that will come back in, but all the programmes were printed, all the food was ordered, so it's a big issue when the game is cancelled on the day.
Yeah. Adam, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us again. I'm going to say I look forward to speaking to you again later in the season, but I suppose you never know.
You never know, Ian, no.
And my thanks to Adam for his time. Now we move on to Bridport. They took on the in-form Bradford Town just at the wrong time.
Yeah, I don't think you could say Bridport were in form. They are struggling a bit at the moment. They conceded 9 in midweek, and then unfortunately, repeated the trick on Saturday afternoon. Tabletop in Bradford, came to town and put 9 past them, repeating obviously what Leicester had managed on Friday night away at Southampton. It was pretty one-sided from first minute to last. I think it was 7-0 at the half-time. So, Bradford firing on all cylinders, and a pair of first-half hat-tricks. I don't think I've seen that before. Matt Morris and Lewis Powell, each bagging trebles before the break. And there are also goals from Tyson Pollard and Charlie Maddison. A thoroughly convincing victory for the Bobcats, and table topping, doing really well at the moment, but tough times for Bridport. So I think they'll need to pick me up sooner rather than later.
Yeah, poor old Bridport. They lost away at Street on Tuesday, and of course. I think one of the things that all Western League watchers have enjoyed this season, more so than any other, is the engagement that our clubs are giving us on social media and Twitter in particular. And Bridport, very good-humoured. I've always enjoyed following them actually on Twitter for the last few seasons, certainly since we've been doing the podcast. But very good-humoured tweet that they posted on Friday in the wake of that. Leicester City Southampton game that Tom's just referred to. Hey, we could be part of the answer to a future trivia question. Which 2 football teams whose home grounds are at St Mary's conceded 9 goals in a league game in the same week? Fame at last, believe we scored 2. Well, I read that on Friday and I thought, well, I wouldn't ever want a football club that I was associated with to be mentioned in the same breath as Southampton, but that's probably got something to do with the fact that I'm from Portsmouth. However, I think poor old Bridport spoke a little bit too soon, because anything the Saints can do, unfortunately, they did exactly the same. Forget the 2 they got away at Street. That 9-0 scoreline at home was a little taste of history repeating itself. Whether or not that makes it an even more fantastic quiz question, I don't know. But they've taken it in good humour, and I really hope for everybody connected with that club that they turn their fortunes around soon this season, because Bridport has always been one of those bastions of the Western League, a very difficult place to go and get a result, although not if you're Bradford Town by the looks of things. Anyway, one more game to talk about in the Premier Division, and it's your hometown club, Tom. It's Odd Down. The visitors were Clevedon.
Yeah, another side struggling at the moment, Odd Down. Unfortunately, and another team to lose at home, not quite as heavily as Bridport, but 2-0 win for Clevedon away from home. Zach Drew scoring right at the beginning of the game, I think inside the first 5 minutes, and then that was how it stayed for the majority of the game. And then it was Sid Camper, 4 minutes from time, wrapping up the victory. Clevedon, 2-0 winners away at Odd Down, who now haven't won in over 2 months in the league, I think. So bit of a fall from grace for Odd Down, but a good win for Clevedon.
If you're thinking, Toolstation, I know they'll save me money, but do they have all the top brands? You know, DeWalt, Makita, Einhell, Stanley, Myra, Kudox, Nest and Santex. Yeah, they do. Over 15,000 trade-quality products in the range, from the leading brands, with prices that are hard to beat. If you want a helping hand to save on your next job, try Toolstation. With over 300 branches, there's always a Toolstation near you.
Now, moving on to the First Division, our first game is Bristol Telephones. Of course, bottom of the table, Bristol Telephones taking on high-flying Ashton and Backwell United. But this game was a lot closer than the form book would have suggested.
Yeah, it was, eventually. I think Ashton and Backwell started really well. And obviously now, I think, up to third following this for win. Taking a 3-goal lead in this one. A couple of goals from Stuart Jones. And then Sam Thomas also getting on the score sheet for them, and it looked like they were probably going to ease to victory. But Bristol Telephones managed to fight back, scoring twice in the second half through Zach Meadows and then substitute Luke Bamfield. But it was Ashton who managed to hang on and claim a 3-2 win away from home.
I'm delighted to welcome back to the Toolstation Western League podcast Stuart Jones, the manager of Ashton and Backwell United. Stuart, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Your game at the weekend was one of the few games to beat the weather. Were you concerned at all before the match that you wouldn't be able to get it on?
I was concerned, so I left the house a lot earlier than I usually would. The ground's only 10 minutes around the corner from me, and I'm quite friendly with numerous members of Bristol Telephones, so I got in touch with a couple of them. I went there, it was immaculate. I was so impressed with how well they've done. So credit to them, to be fair.
Obviously, Bristol Telephones are having a difficult time of it this season so far, although I think perhaps their results probably belie their league position. And that's pretty much how it played out. It was a close-run thing on Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah, they'll get out. I think they'll get out of it, the way they played. They didn't give up. I must be honest, at 3-0 up, we were really comfortable until the last 10 minutes. And then I think we may have taken our foot off and got comfortable. They may have upped it. It certainly wasn't down to fitness, because my lot are required to do circuits on Mondays at a local gym. But with what they've got, I'm pretty sure they'll get out of it.
I mean, were you ever worried at all that the great comeback would be on?
You always are. Unless you're 5-0 up, I think you're always worried. It's something that we work on quite a lot. When we've got the ball and we lose it, which is going to happen. Especially with the way we set up and how we play. So we do sort of drill that at training, in terms of we've got the ball on the edge of their box, all of a sudden the ball goes over the midfield's head and everybody sort of retreats. So we sort of planned for it, but yeah, you're never comfortable unless you're 5-0 up and there's 10 seconds to go.
Now, by my reckoning, and I stand to be corrected here, you've been on quite an impressive run, particularly in the league. Am I right in thinking that you haven't been beaten since August?
In the league, yeah, we lost to Almondsbury, and they've done us a favour, because they prized open the cracks. So therefore we went back and sort of altered a few little things, nothing major. We changed a few things around. A few personnel, went back to basics in areas. So yeah, thanks Almondsbury, done us a favour.
Now that is an impressive run, and it also includes victories over the likes of Calne and Wells. So do you think that those sides, who are obviously much fancied in these early parts of the season, do you think that they'll be there or thereabouts at the end of the season?
Yes, we've played Canton, Wells, Longwell Green. 3 of them we played them away. We drew with Wincanton and beat Longwell Green at home. So we've faced. I think Longwell Green are going to take some. I think they'll be up there. And I got a funny feeling Wincanton will upset a few as well.
What about your own ambitions this season?
Yeah, that stays in the lock and chest, I'm afraid.
Excellent stuff. Well, this week, of course, is very much Les Phillips Cup week, and of course you face the imposing opportunity of taking on Bitton, which I'm sure is a great opportunity for you and your side. But I mean, arguably, I suppose, is the more important game going to be Welton Rovers at the weekend?
Welton is the more important game, absolutely. I went and watched Bitton against a team in the FA Trophy, and what a complete waste of my time, because the team that I watched is probably not going to play against us. So we can set up and prepare as much as we want. It goes back to the old Ranieri Chelsea days, where they got such a wealth of footballers, and very good ones at that. So I don't know what we're going to be facing against Bitton, to be honest. So we're going to have to wait and see with that one. But absolutely, Welton's a lovely, lovely ground. I enjoy going there because the pitch is decent. So that is the more important one, absolutely.
They took a point off Cheddar at the weekend, who, of course, are another one of the league's fancy sides. And I mean, you can't obviously underestimate Welton because you don't know which side is going to turn up. But I mean, it's a great advertisement for First Division football, isn't it? The quality at both ends of the division.
I don't think the points tally for the teams that got this year are not going to be the points tallies of previous years with the 90s. I don't think that's going to be necessarily so. I watched Welton against the Vises and I was sat behind your good self. When I left, they were 2-0 down and needed snookers. And by the time I got home, they were 2-2. So you just don't know, do you?
No, you certainly don't. I went to get a pint thinking the whole thing was over, and I missed the final goal. So there you go. That just goes to show what I know. You've got Radstock as well coming up afterwards. So you're going to be well acquainted with the teams from the Somer Valley. They're having a good season. A footballing side like yourselves. So, would you going into Christmas? Is it a difficult time of the year with the current weather and everything? Is that going to affect the way that your side plays football?
You never can tell. Like we've got people approaching bookings or the magic 5 number bookings as well. So that'll probably come into play. Years gone by, the older experienced footballers would sort of try and get a ban for around the Christmas mark, but I'd like to think that mine are a little bit more honest than that. Regards to the weather, I think the pitches are better nowadays than what they used to be. So we had one game last year away somewhere where the pitch wasn't great, but apart from that, everywhere else we've been all the time has been excellent, I must say. So I'm quite impressed with the division's facilities, to be honest, football pitches wise.
Excellent. Stuart, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Be fascinated to keep an eye on your results over the coming months, and perhaps in the new year we can catch up again and see how you're getting on towards the end of the season.
Absolutely. We thought we'd upset you because you haven't mentioned us on your podcast the last 2 weeks, and I got a telling off by my chairman because I'd upset you, but I said I hadn't spoke to you. So
you certainly haven't upset me, and I'm very pleased that your chairman pays attention to these things. It's excellent to know that people are listening to us. So thanks very much for your support.
No problem. It's part of the homework. Take care.
And moving on to something of a Somerset derby between the Cheesemen and the Green Army.
Yeah, and it was a pretty good game there as well. Finished 1-1, points shared at Bowden's Park, and it was Welton who actually went ahead after half an hour. Harry Barter scoring his first goal for the club, but Cheddar managed to get back on level terms pretty soon after. Adam Wright scoring a penalty. Obviously, he's having another pretty good season in front of goal after being top of the charts last year. But that was how it stayed. And so Cheddar and Welton sharing the points there.
Now then, our next match is Lebec United. They took on, well, we're never sure whether we can describe Corsham as a side that are in or out of form. It would appear on Saturday they were out of it.
Yeah, it seems so. Lebec, another good win for them, though. They're now, I think it's 4 wins in 5 in the league, up into the top half, and doing pretty well. A couple of goals from Cameron Brown before half-time, helping them to a 3-0 win. I think they had another goal in stoppage time. But yeah, up to 7th, and a good home win for them over Corsham.
And finally, Warminster Town were not at the races against Wincanton.
No, but Wincanton definitely are at the races at the moment. Now into a share of the lead at the top of the table alongside Calm. Following this, a pretty, well, Warminster not doing too well this year, just 4 wins, but not an easy place to go, I wouldn't say. So Wincanton probably be quite happy to have left with a 1-0 win. It was obviously a big midweek win for Warminster as well, so you could say they're banging form. But it was a goal midway through the first half from Toby Cole and helping Wincanton to a 1-0 win.
Yeah, absolutely. We spoke to Chris Wise, the manager of Wincanton, of course, on last week's podcast. And although I made the point about Warminster's relatively poor form this season, Chris was absolutely adamant that that was going to be a difficult game, and so it proved. So that just goes to show how well Wincanton are doing this season, and certainly ones to watch. We take a look at the upcoming fixtures. Hopefully the weather gods are smiling on us a little bit more this week. We've got plenty of Les Phillips Cup action going on in the midweek, starting on Tuesday the 29th of October. We've got plenty of first round ties, and that extends, of course, on to Wednesday the 23rd of October. Now, the vast majority of people who will be listening to this will be listening after those games have taken place, so it'd be a bit weird to start talking about them now. So we're going to turn our attention to the fixtures on Saturday the 2nd of November. We will, of course, be talking about our picks for the Premier Division and the First Division, but we have to start with the FA Vars second round ties. Still got plenty of teams involved in this competition. Tom, which fixture tickles your fancy?
I've gone for the all Premier Division tie between Tavistock and Exmouth. Obviously, two Devon sides who've joined us this year, and recently took part in a league clash against one another, which Exmouth claimed a 4-2 win, but that was on home soil for them. So Tavistock at home on Saturday afternoon in the Vars, and yeah, obviously be wanting a bit of payback quite soon after, and obviously it's a pretty good chance for one of them to get one of them will be in the third round. So yeah, looking forward to seeing who comes out on top. And yeah, plenty of other sides, as you say, from the Premier Division, and then also Warminster in action on Saturday in the Vars. And yeah, fingers crossed a couple of them can get through to the next round.
Plenty of really interesting matchups. A couple that really take my eye are the games involving Southwest Peninsula sides, particularly those from the Western Conference, the Cornish sides. Buckland travel to St Austell, which is no easy place to go, not least because they're leading that conference. But hot on their heels are Saltash United, and they entertain Bridgewater Town. So two of our strong sides taking on two from the peninsula. It'll be fascinating to see who comes out on top in those clashes. That's blimey. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of move my mic away so that I can cough, but it's clearly not working. Throat's clear now, I think.
But those aren't the matches I'm gonna go for. I'm gonna go for Warminster Town at home to AFC Portchester. This isn't another opportunity for me to talk about my Portsmouth roots, but this is an opportunity to celebrate the fact that Warminster Town, albeit that their league form might not be what they wanted this season, they're still flying the flag in the Vars in the second round of that competition. Long may that continue. They're at home, so hopefully there's a good chance for them to progress into the next round, and it's fantastic. It just goes to show the depth in our leagues that we've still got a First Division side going well in that competition. So I'll be keeping everything crossed for them. Now, moving on to the First Division, Tom, which match here tickles your fancy?
I've got, well, whether it tickles my fancy or not is an interesting one, but I've gone for Odd Down versus Bridport. We mentioned them earlier in the pod and said how they've suffered quite a few defeats recently, but obviously going up against each other. It'll probably be a 0-0 draw now I've mentioned that, but something's got to give, you'd imagine. Obviously Bridport probably more in need of a boost following a couple of pretty heavy defeats, but Odd Down probably see this as an opportunity to get back on track. So an interesting game, and as I say, hopefully for one of them it can be a boost for the remainder of the months, and well for the calendar year at least, and can get a bit of form going.
Well, I'm going to go for a clash at the other end of the table. Brislington in 5th take on Hallen in 6th. Hallen are at home, and I think this is going to be a really competitive affair. Two sides, of course, going well in the Premier Division, arguably better than perhaps either would have considered at the beginning of the season. When we think of the strength, both sides above the likes of Bitton and Westbury, Buckland, Shepton Mallet, of course, who started the season so well, and we've got Tavistock still further down in the table as well. Both of these sides doing very well, and I'd be fascinated to see who comes out in top on in that one. So that's going to be a really competitive game in the Premier Division. Moving on to the First Division, which tie are you plumping for there, Tom?
Yeah, I managed to find a game with a couple of top sides. Longwell Green Sports, 3-game win streak for them. They host Wells, who obviously are doing pretty well as well, up in 4th. So 5v4, pretty important game towards the top of the table. And looking forward to seeing who comes out on top.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit out of left field, but the first division's a little bit out of left field, isn't it? I think if we know anything about the first division, there is no form guide. Well, therefore we need one match to put that to the test. Table topping Carn Town take on the team in 20th place, bottom of the table, Bristol Telephones. Surely they've got no chance. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we're talking about the Phones taking something from that game this time next week on the podcast. Not because Carn aren't a fantastic side, because of course they are, but this is a mad league. Now we are going to have a little chat about the goal scorers, but before we do that, I've already referenced social media once on the podcast this week, because I found that tweet from Bridport quite amusing. Whilst social media is very good at giving us a little chuckle from time to time, of course it's also another opportunity for clubs to talk about sometimes the sadder news that affect them. One of the benefits of social media is that this news is now something that the Western League family can share as a collective community. Our clubs in isolation in their own communities, of course, will often operate like a family, and will feel each other's triumphs and disasters the same. But now this is something that can be shared across the league, which is a good thing. After Tom and I produced the podcast last week, I was looking ahead to the midweek fixtures, and I saw a tweet that went out on October the 23rd from Westbury United, which talked about a long-serving clubman, the groundsman, Roy Dutchman, who suffered a heart attack at the ground, preparing the ground for the match that evening with Bridgewater Town. Roy was taken to the RUH following that, and unfortunately later in the week it was reported that he sadly passed away. So our thoughts go to everybody at Westbury United. What was fascinating, though, was the outpouring of support that came from the other Western League clubs, and within only a few days there was a very moving tribute that appeared on the Plymouth Parkway website, which I saw via Twitter, where they announced that there will be a minute's applause held before their game to remember Roy. That was the game that was scheduled to go ahead with Westbury at the weekend. Unfortunately, that one beat the weather, but it was still a very important and moving thing to see. Sadly, the same club, Plymouth Parkway, have suffered their own loss this week, and that is Alan Horswell. He lost his battle with illness and sadly passed away. We're not going to remember or have the opportunity to remember perhaps every fan of every club, and unfortunately, as our ability to communicate these things becomes easier, we're only likely to see more and more messages of this nature. But I thought it was worth highlighting these things on the podcast, perhaps not just in reference to Alan and to Roy, but also all of the other people that have passed away, not just this season, but in recent seasons from the clubs across the Western League family. So our thoughts are with all of those people, and we share these tragedies together. And I thought it was right that we reflect on that in this week's podcast. I'm not going to do it every week, but certainly it was something that struck me following Twitter over the last few days. Now, to finish things on a slightly happier note, we're going to have a look at the goal scorers, Tom, and who are our hot shots.
So at the moment, we have Adam Carter still pretty far out in front in the Premier Division in terms of league goals. He's got 17, and then there's a whole raft of players on 9. We've got Jack Taylor of Bridgewater, Jack Fillingham of Shepton, Lucas Vowles of Clevedon, Josh Egan of Bitton, and Gary Higdon of Bradford. They're all on 9 league goals. Down in the First Division, we've got James Rustall of Radstock, top of the Pops, 14 league goals. And then we've got 4 other players who've reached double figures. We've got Harry Foster of Wells on 11, and then 3 chaps on 10. Stuart Windsor of Carlton, Adam Wright of Cheddar, and Danny Carter of Longwell Green, who's banging form at the moment. And then looking at all competitions, Tavistock's Jack Crago still leading the way. He's got 20 goals, plenty of cup goals for him this year. Rustall has got 19, Carter 17. And then, a lot of the similar names as I've mentioned. Foster 14, Higdon 13, and then Taylor and Fillingham both on 12. So it's very much Rustle and Carter, the two to chase in terms of big goals so far this season.
Excellent. Tom, thank you very much indeed for your time and battling through illness in order to do this week's podcast with me. We have, of course, we've been reviewing your excellent bulletin. Where can the listeners find that?
That's on the website. There's a tab on the top that takes you to the most recent publication, and then it's also on the homepage where you can download it as a PDF. So that's should be available every weekend, covering the games.
Excellent. Tom, thank you very much indeed for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you on next week's Tool Station Western League podcast.